Hi there, this is a piece of audio content that is only available in full over at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. We wanted to give you a little bit of a preview to show you what you might be missing out on. You can join us for as little as $1 under the pay what you want model at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits and get access to over dozens of hours of content, including every episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. We appreciate you listening, whether you're a patron or whether you're listening on the free feed. You're under no obligation to join, and thank you very much for checking out this preview. But if you'd like to know what these episodes and extra content sounds like, here's a little bit of a sneak peek. Tough act to follow, though. I mean, like, how in the world could you hang on to kids that way? Like, the closest I can think of is, like, when they switch actors for the Doctor in Doctor Who, because I'm watching Doctor Who lately. But even that, it's just like, most of the time you're dealing with a wider range of ages of people who can understand why this is being done. This is kids. They're going to have a bit of a harder time understanding why somebody who comes across as their friend is suddenly just replaced by a different guy. That's Joe. The new guy they have right now is Josh Dela Cruz, who plays Josh. He's a theatrical actor. He's the current face of the show. Everything that I've seen about him, he seems really well suited for the role. Friend of the show, DJ Bob. If you go check out the DJ Bob Show podcast, I believe he has an interview with Josh Dela Cruz and maybe even more people from Blue's Clues. If you want to know more behind the scenes stuff about current Blue's Clues, check out the DJ Bob Show. But yes, of course, Lucas, I was working up to Steve Burns, who played Steve. And everybody knows Blue's Clues Steve. Steve Burns is an actor, comedian, musician. He was even a skateboarder at the time, where he was chosen from over 1,000 auditions, and he infamously left the show in 2002. He was effectively the face of the show all throughout his mid-20s. But yeah, now's a good time, Lucas, and I hope I'm not stepping on your point here, but I'll just start with the bold here. I think he's fantastic on this show.
Well, it's something where, I had my preconceived notions about going back and watching this.
Yeah.
And I feel like this performance or this style of delivery of children's show host has been parodied to death, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is kind of the kind of the Rosetta Stone of children's TV show hosts, the addressing the camera, the enthusiasm. And so I feel like in my memory, it was kind of this exaggerated, cartoonish version of the Steve performance. In watching this, it's way more understated and kind of subtle than I expected. And He really is fantastic. Like, when I think about when Blue's Clues would be parodied, and it's like, hey, kids, what's going on? What do we do today? What's this? The Steve performance really is not like that. There's like a wink and a smile with everything. There's an earnesty in it all where it doesn't really come across as an adult forcing himself to be enthusiastic. There's a part in this episode where they go through the painting, Mario 64 style. They're in this fantastical world. And Steve's like, oh, cool. It's not this big in your face, whoa, we're in the blah, blah, blah. And I think these type of performances eventually became that.
Yes.
But there really is a subtlety. And with Steve's delivery, there's little things he does. Like, there's kind of like a glint in his eye when he looks at the camera. He'll like say something and then he'll kind of be like, oh, wow. Which is not something, those kind of like little edges I feel like got sanded off these performances to the point where, a couple of years later, anybody who's a live action person on a children's show became basically a live action version of a cartoon character.
Yes.
But there's a little bit of humanity in Steve. There's this subtlety in the performance, a warmth, dare I say, that is really palpable and I think actually pretty unique. And I think that that's actually kind of the secret sauce to why, and this show, the show is called Blue's Clues. Blue is actually, I think, a pretty unimportant part of the whole equation.
Yeah, she's a little incidental, huh?
Really incidental. First of all, she doesn't do much, and also she never talks.
True.
it really is. It could be called Steve.
Right. Yeah.
He is seismic in terms of his performance to this whole thing coming together. And so I feel like, no offense to Joe, but Steve kind of set the precedent. And I think if there is no Steve, there is no Blue's Clues, and there really isn't this kind of genre of children's television. And my comparison, Dora the Explorer, very similar formatted show with the interactivity and the call and response. I think that's another reason why Dora is just so maligned and thought of as so annoying, is that Dora is this husk who's like, "Hola, my name's Dora." It's the same inflection, it's the same every time. Again, there's this kind of subtlety, this understatedness of the Steve performance that I think is really endearing, and I think it makes this whole thing work.
Well, and it's kind of a tightrope walk, You mentioned how there's a little bit of something going on behind his eyes that is like he's not just that, as you said, that husk that's just there to spout catchphrases and take us along and be that live action cartoon character. But I don't think you catch that as a kid. What he comes across as I recall watching the show, is that he's like a big brother who is totally up for whatever it is that you want to do. And it just so happens that you want to do the same thing. And there's a way to do that Steve Burns does through this performance, where he is both credibly an adult, but also seems on your level. And there's a way you have to play that is both not sarcastic and not saccharine sweet, and he manages to walk that every time, and it's really fascinating from a performance standpoint. He never overdoes it. He never seems like he's better than the show. He has just the right amount of energy without going too far, and it's really, really fascinating to see. And like I said, he was the face of the show. In his mid-20s was when he did this. I watched a couple of interviews with him from, recently, about him reflecting on his time there, and it was a bit of a head trip. So eventually he wanted to leave the show because he wanted to do other things. He retreated from public life. He still did acting adjacent stuff, but he lived a whole full life. And then of course there were rumors that Steve died, which was the big thing. And I saw that the year after he left, he was on the Rosie O'Donnell show, and he just to say that "Hi kids, I'm not dead." So he was trying to swim against the tide of the Steve died rumors, which I feel like was another playground thing that maybe I was a bit too old for. But it's just oh yeah, the guy from Blue's Clues, he died. I'm no, he didn't. And in fact, he's doing great in recent years. Speaking of, at TikTok, he is something of a mild social media star, especially for people who are around our age who remember him as Steve from Blue's Clues. He had a little bit of a moment in the past couple of years when he came back from college and addressed us and apologized for leaving.
He's bald now. I think he's on Cameo.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a good living if you can make it, but it seems to be that he's finally found a little bit more peace with dealing with the fact that he was a central part of this huge show when he was younger than the both of us are now. When we were doing radio, that's the same age as when he was on Blue's Clues. I don't think I would have been able to handle it better. So I'm glad Steve is doing well, and I'm glad we were able to kind of recognize how important he is.
Okay, that's going to do it for now, but we will see you next time on Elwood City Limits, or at patreon.com/ElwoodCityLimits if you decide to join us. Thank you very much, and have a great week.